Hello and welcome to another episode of The Green Scene. My name is Matt Green, and today is another great day for The Green Scene. For those of you that have not watched The Green Scene, welcome aboard this journey. And I want to tell you a little bit about The Green Scene and what we're here and what we're trying to do with this. It truly is a journey. We're trying to connect the craft of building and development with the close knit culture, drawing parallels with the spirit of golf, community life, and workplace culture. We cover what it takes to be successful in this world where change is happening rapidly. It's unbelievable how fast change is happening. Drilling down on systems, processes, people's experiences, projects, all trying to take a bigger picture look on what it takes to have true success out there in the workplace and in the workplace culture. We talk about the pieces and parts that go into building great communities, the things that create incredible experiences, and the way teams behave when no one's watching. Expect candid conversations with executives, decision makers, builders, golf industry leaders, and experienced professionals who endured success along the way. Let's talk about where people belong, how neighbors become friends, and why teams perform under pressure. Because great companies, neighborhoods, and clubs aren't built by accident, they're cultivated. And we at the Green Scene want to be in those conversations and having that real radical candor. So let's talk about today's conversation. Why this conversation? I'm so excited about this conversation because, as I mentioned, great communities are not built by accidents. Great communities are not built by accidents. The leaders who are involved in these communities are the ones who are tested. They talk about when they're tested and the lessons that they've learned, and they stay in the fight to succeed. Because building great communities does not happen over time. It's a long time. It's a cultivation of a lot of parts and pieces that come together. And so today, this is what defines the green scene and what we're all about. And I'm really excited to talk about our guest today, Turner Simkins. Turner's a great friend of mine. He's a great mentor. Uh, Turner sits in an unusual intersection in the world, quite frankly, let alone the real estate business. He's a real estate developer. He's an investor. He's an inventor. He's a land steward. He's an author. He's a nonprofit leader. He's a dad. And I'm sure he's many other things as well. His perspective on building with intention spans cycles and disciplines and kinds of personal adversity that quietly shapes how a leader allocates his time, his attention, and his capital. This episode is a guided tour through that thinking, and it really is what the green scene is all about. So, without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the audience to Mr. Turner Simkins.
Matt, how are
Welcome.
you?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome.
Good to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Well, it's as I mentioned, we talked a little bit out before. This isn't a podcast where we're going to have 8 guests a month. This is a podcast that we're going to take our time with guests, and we want it to be really impactful. And so, I think I've always just been admired at some of the things that you've been involved in your career, and some people that are involved in a lot of things in career, they just want to talk about it. But I love how humble you are in your success. So I just want to congratulate you and
Well,
thank you for
thank you.
coming on. So
Well, thanks for rolling the dice on me.
yeah,
Those other
absolutely,
8 guys may not
absolutely,
show up
yeah,
after this
yeah.
interview.
So why don't we get started? Why don't you just go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're at today, kind of some of the things you're doing today for fun and things of that nature. And then I know we've got a lot of exciting things to
Well,
talk
first, let
about
me
today.
say that thank you for saying you admire what I do. I admire what you do. I'm all over the place. You're all over the place, but you seem to have everything kind of corralled
Yeah,
and under control,
we
whereas
try.
I'm kind of feeling like a pinball these days. So I guess the short answer is everywhere.
Yeah,
I'm bouncing around. I've, lately, I mean, personally, it's been a lot focused on family. I've got 3 boys, as you know. My middle son, Brennan, who had cancer as a child, and actually, and consequently, my other 2 boys had crazy childhoods. Graduated from College of Charleston last weekend, and his little
yeah,
brother Christopher graduated from University of South Carolina the day before. So we went back-to-back graduations, but we always they're just 11 months apart, and Christopher was always the wingman, throughout all that experience. Older brother Nat's working, got a great career, but Brennan, the fact that he's here on this planet is a miracle, and the fact that he's graduated from college and has a job in Charleston, and that's number one for me right now.
Amen right there. That's great.
Professionally, still all over the place. I think I told you one time that through my you haven't been in I've pretty much focused on master planning communities from
Hmm.
starting in the luxury golf course gated community days back when I worked with the Nicholas organization to moving back to Augusta and running a new homes division for Blanchard and Calhoun, where we did everything. I actually came there to do a golf course community, and we started doing other things. And then I had already been drinking the new urbanism Kool-Aid, before
Absolutely.
that, through my friendship with Vince and some of the other guys we know out there. And then, then we tackled Hammond's Ferry in North Augusta, which took a lot longer because we started just a few years before the big crash in 08, 09. Managed to keep air in the tank, and it's pretty much done. I'm very proud of that. But I swore afterwards, I was like, I'm not doing another master plan community. I don't have it's just so back end
Yeah.
oriented. But I love it, and it's just one of those things. It's almost like I guess I'd have to call it an addiction. I just feel like I love the planning. I love I feel like we've come a long way in terms of making places. And I think now that I've got involved with Kane Island, and Kane, by the way, came out of a career change. I now work with an investment advisory group out of New York, and I kind of
Hmm.
came on board as a real estate guy, general wealth management, but of course we do a lot of private investment and so forth. So as the alternative and one of the alternative investment guys, I had a client wanted to buy some land or an investment in the low country. I just thought we'd get them an income producing. So next thing you know, we bought an island, and I'm like, oh gosh, here we go.
Yeah.
But the great thing about it is I've been thinking about this stuff so long. It's about what are we're getting things done better, design wise, human scale, walkability, but what is missing? What is it that makes great places that can't be
Yeah.
calculated with tangible numbers that you can put in a construction or hammers,
Yeah.
wood and hammers or pipes and dirt, and to me it's this cultural, and it's all of those little ingredients that bring people together, and not just front porches, but things like art and music and wellness, and trying to encourage a sense of civic mindedness and
Hmm.
understanding in the people who live there to want to truly understand a little bit better why we're trying to encourage this sort of
Yeah.
thing
I
and
often say that, communities are extreme cultivation, right? I mean, it's a little
right.
bit like farming. I mean, you've got to plant the seeds, and I mean, it takes season after season after season to establish an
And
incredible
that
crop.
first season is critical.
It's the most critical.
Yeah,
It's the most
and
critical.
but they're all critical.
They're all
It's
critical.
just like the three notes in a you have a first, third, and a fifth in a chord, in a musical chord. It doesn't work without all three elements. But
Yeah.
that root note is that first season
Yeah.
that you're talking about. And for example, in Kane, we're instilling these things, and we want to make it authentic. You don't want to just say, oh, here's some music guy on Friday night. But it's how do you encourage a place that songwriters really want to be part of
Hmm.
and be part of a community where other people live, and maybe they could do whatever for a living. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
second home, maybe they're lawyers or whatever. Same thing with artists and food people and farm, people that work in the gardens, conservationists. I mean, there's just so many little pieces, I
Yeah.
guess so when you look at that field, there are a lot, you've got that main crop, but there's all the little
Yeah.
pieces of fertilizer or whatever
Yeah.
that go in there.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because we talk about cultivation and real estate, and I got to believe all the things that you're involved with are just make up a lot of those thoughts and ideas, right? I was reading that you're an investor, an author, a real estate guy junkie, as I am. You're a musician. You're a land steward. You do a lot of different
Hmm.
things, and I don't know how you keep it all focused, right? And in
Yeah.
one lane. But just talk about that as we before we get into real estate. Just talk about all those things and the why you're involved. I know it's not by
Yeah. All
choice,
right. Well, some of them are certainly. I mean, real estate's obviously by choice.
right?
And that's led to other things. Like I mentioned, I'm working with an investment advisory group. So, I mean, that's kind of allowed me to sort of pollinate into other areas of investment. I'm meeting new people. I'm continuing to learn. I remember my mom, who's 91, reads books. She'll read a book a week or more.
It's
She says she never
amazing.
stopped learning. You know, and but I've also begun working during began looking at in the world of tax credits, which is involved in obviously the real estate business in
Yeah.
terms of affordable housing, historic preservation, renewable energy, which sometimes all three of those elements are combined. In the state of Georgia, you got film, you've got, um, and um, and so all of those things are part of the future, part of everything from the upper level, from the political side of things, all the way down to the needs that we have in this state and other states to make sure we've got all these new industry moving to the area,
Yeah.
but we can't, because of politics, we can't lose sense of the fact that all these great new jobs are here, but if the rents or the costs are so
Yeah.
far up, somebody's got to live somewhere, and it
Yeah.
needs to be, decent enough to do that. So,
And there's a lot
trying
of
to keep your fingers
examples.
on
Yeah.
those, and on the stewardship piece. I mentioned my mom's 91. My dad's 92. My dad is very well known in this state and really throughout the Southeast. And have been for a long time. Was kind of the guy in land and timber properties, hunting farms and that sort of thing, hunting plantations and whatnot. And our family has some land assets in mostly in South Carolina and Georgia. And so I'm now kind of running the farm, and he is so knowledgeable. I mean, I think one of the reasons he was so successful is, I mean, he became an arborist. I mean, he's qualified.
Yeah.
And he has all, but he could tell you the botanical name of anything that grows
That's amazing.
anywhere, whether it's
Probably
here.
still at
You could be
92.
walking through the forest in Japan, and he'll tell you what it is.
That's awesome.
And but learning what makes a forest healthy. We primarily grow hardwood forests. Matter of fact, we converted 900 acres of agricultural row crop land back to hardwood forest. When you see so many pine trees around here,
Yeah.
and again, following my father's advice, Mother Nature didn't plant pine trees. It was a little more diversity. You had
Yeah.
a mixture of things. So, you have everything from oaks to even some of the sort of what we consider junkier trees like, tulip, like sycamores and things
Hmm.
like that. But it again, it's getting the world or that little ecosystem back on a cycle
Yeah.
that is best for the future of that property for the next generation, but also, in a way that we can continue to be responsible. We can harvest trees responsibly and stay within the rules of our conservation easements and that stuff. That's fascinating to me. But, all of a sudden I'm just doing this, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like so all of a sudden let's shoehorn that in here somewhere.
But
Why
it all
just do it?
ties back to things I love about real estate is all of that is relatable to a piece of land, a community, a place. I mean, all
Hmm.
of those experiences that you talked about, 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. Only benefit to create a
Yeah.
place,
And
so I want to talk about that. But you mentioned a lot of different things, and I always ask this question to people: tell me who the most influential person that you have in your life, or you've ever met in your life, and the why,
yeah,
right? Because you've done a lot of
yeah,
you've
it's
done a
hard
lot
to
of
say.
really interesting
It's kind of
things,
like asking
but
my favorite song. It
yeah,
depends on the day. No, certainly, I'll probably have to do at least a couple. My father,
yeah,
for you know, he's a tough guy, but at the same time, he's got a big heart and and well loved by a lot of people. But just admiring how he became so respected and sort of just observing what allowed him to become recognized in that way. I mean, he wasn't like a celebrity by any chance,
yeah,
but just recognized as an honest guy who knows what he's talking about, whose door's always open for the younger generation that's wanting to learn. I mean, today there's guys that are trying to get in the land business that want to come talk to him,
yeah.
and he's always happy to do that.
That's great.
Or take 3 hours out of his day to go to somebody's house because they're afraid they're going to lose a tree. Little things like that. So, that's, I tend to say yes to a lot of things,
Hmm.
just because I want to be that way. It's kind of hard right now just because I've got a lot of I do need to kind of distill this things down into a little bit more, a little more organized chart. But so, Dad, my first boss, Bob Sierra, who ran the Nicholas Sierra, the Jack Nicholas Development
Mhm.
Company, I learned all the fundamentals of real estate from
Yeah.
him. And he put a lot of faith. I was a philosophy major in college, right? I mean, I
Really?
did not in English,
Yeah.
So I mean, I didn't come out of but I think having a liberal arts background was, in retrospect, I think was the thing that benefits me now. I think it's probably going to benefit the next generation too, because of AI and so many jobs being. But if you can write, if you can communicate with people, you can, if you can learn, express yourself creatively. That's kind of what worked my way up the food chains.
Yeah.
And he moved me up when there were other guys who had construction backgrounds or legal backgrounds, and just put me in the hot seat and said, figure it out. So I have to thank him for that.
That's great.
And then, of course, my wife, and I don't know, I can go on and on.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
No, that's
for all
good.
the stuff that we, had to do as a,
Well, family is
well,
big.
well, particularly going through having a son, who had cancer and relapsed and relapsed and relapsed. We could have. That's a I mean, that's basically the recipe for divorce.
Yeah.
And we managed to work together, and we didn't always agree on things, but we were able to sit down and work it out and make sure. And thank goodness we did, because we
Yeah.
got three boys who love each other, and it's all
Kudos to you,
good.
man. That's
Hmm.
so. Let's talk about that, right? Because you wrote a book about it,
Yeah.
possibilities, and I read the book recently, and it's a hard book to get through. But I got even more respect for you after
Mhm.
getting through it, and I can't even imagine going something
Yeah.
like through that. My wife and I went through a blip compared to that with my son who had uh, an ACL and a meniscus
Mm.
injury from playing football, and I know what we lived
Yeah.
for five
It's
months,
just
and
a matter of scale, if that's,
yeah, but it was interesting the strain that it put on the family, just in general. Like you go
hmm
from normal to not normal real quick.
that was the first thing when we walked into, when he was diagnosed. They told us to go to the fifth floor of the Children's Hospital of Georgia, and the pediatric hospital, and we walked up to the fifth floor, and this kid standing there with an IV pole and no hair. We're like, oh God, here we go. And the first thing a nurse practitioner said to us was, "You're going to have everything's a new normal now.
Yeah,
You just like, I mean, it's a swerve.
yeah,
You think you're going this way, and you're on this path. You better get used to it and
yeah.
navigate." Um,
So
so
it's so hard. Like, what inspired you to write a book about that? I
Well,
mean,
throughout. Well, it started with a blog.
yeah,
Have you ever heard of Caring Bridge or
yeah,
Care
yeah,
Pages?
absolutely,
It's
yeah,
basically a platform so you don't have to call everybody and say,
yeah,
like, here's everything that's going on.
yeah,
Don't call me. I've got to focus.
yeah.
And so it started out like that. And then also, Brendan was inpatient, not inpatient, but inpatient in the hospital at the first phase for 90 days with like a week off in between every 30-day
Yeah,
section. So you're living in the hospital with your kid, and spending the night there. And the blog went from that to just me spilling my guts about, all right, what am I thinking as a parent, as a caregiver, as someone who's got to keep his job going somehow, or as somebody who's got to keep his brothers from, freaking out, without, and not to mention all, dealing with all the stuff
yeah.
going
All this
around you. And so,
stuff.
and that just it really just became viral. And then the whole thing lasted like 4 years. So by the time we moved to Memphis, we're at St. Jude's, I had like 10,000 plus subscribers to this thing. And I think people were reading it like a reality TV show, like what's going to happen to this kid? They were
Yeah,
tuning in because I was posting stuff pretty much about every other day.
yeah.
And I had a publisher from Connecticut, who was the publisher of Globe Pequot Press, reached out and introduced herself. And somehow she started reading it, and she said, "You should write a book." And I just sort of pushed that aside. But when we moved back from Memphis after his fourth bone marrow transplant, from had four transplants from four different donors, which is unheard of. I mean, at the time,
It's
I mean,
amazing.
it's never been done before. He wasn't supposed to survive the second one, and we were told he wouldn't. And you get a little PTSD. I mean, not a little. There's PTSD.
Yeah,
I mean, you go back to work, and it doesn't. I mean, it was like the passion you're talking about. It was gone.
It's gone.
And I had that was, I guess, good luck. It was kind of during that recession period, so I didn't have a whole lot going on. And then tried to start this other. We started a digital marketing business, which was a good little company. We were about 10 years too early because nobody bought into social media
Yeah.
advertising and
Yeah.
targeting and all that stuff at that time. We did okay, but I couldn't. Fortunately, I had good partners there because they had to tote most of the water. And it was so. I decided to do it, and I think at the end of the day, it was a cathartic thing for me because I remember rereading the blog, and I would just there was stuff I'd forgotten. I'd just lose it.
Just lose it.
And then the book got great reviews in the literary community. I mean, some of the most respected authors that, of mine, gave it great reviews. And so it's matter of fact, I've had a guy talk to me about making a movie out of it. The same group that just did that Nuremberg movie. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But we're having a conversation, so
Yeah.
would make a interesting series. Who knows?
Well, I can only imagine to relive that story, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to live through it, but to relive it, but
Well,
you
it's
know,
part of you forever, and it becomes
yeah,
part of when you think about communities. If you think about the places that make you feel alive, like St. Jude does it in Memphis. Like, all right, so most of these kids aren't going to live. So how can the place that they live make them not think about the
yeah,
worst, but it's not so much that it's like what makes them think forward to the best,
hmm,
that's a healing thing. I mean, it's something that rather than having this group crying over here and this group crying over here, those groups come together and laugh,
yeah,
and so what are the physical things we can do to make that happen? So I try to apply a little bit of that to what I think about when we're building the stuff I'm working on now. And some of it's kind of hard to articulate that to a partner you don't hasn't worked with in a while or ever. Like where are you coming from? Is
yeah,
there's a lot of deep seated stuff, but these are things I've observed and I've seen it happen, and I know it's there's a thing inside us that
yeah,
responds to scale, to color, to sound, to smells. And that's kind of applying that to that. So I have learned a lot through that, and of course, what I've learned from other people, um, well,
So my guess is uh, one of the things I love about the book is that obviously you don't see adversity like you did before that, right? I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's things in today's life that maybe used to upset you, but today you're just like, you
like
know
that's not
what?
that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's not that big of a deal, right? And I,
Yeah,
I kind of feel like social media, right? I mean,
yeah.
I am slowly trying to get off of social media. I really
Hmm.
don't do it a lot, but I just feel like there's nothing good about it,
Yeah.
right? There's
I mean,
there's
I post like
I pay
a cool
attention.
memorable
Yeah, I
picture,
pay
like here's something I'm
attention.
proud of my son for graduating, or this is a great sunset, or I really
Yeah,
don't look at it.
yeah,
And I think that I know you mentioned talking about the next generation of development. I think that in the workplace we've got to let teach kids who graduate from college now that you are not measured by that.
no,
And you need to stop measuring yourself by what you think other people think or by what some video says you should be,
yeah,
this ideal person, whether they're the ideal golf swing or the ideal physique or whatever. Just, you got to shut that off
yeah,
because there's certain analog components to the business world that aren't going to go away. And that's yeah, I think maybe the hospitality industry is probably a great one that I think it will survive to a degree. There'll be amenities and things that
yeah,
might be, but the engagement with people and having the skills to talk to people without being self conscious or anything that's without saying what you think you're supposed to say, but saying
absolutely,
what you're,
yeah,
being
yeah,
intentional. My son Brendan, Ben Navarro.
yeah,
So
yeah, of
I
course,
still haven't met Ben. But he's major influence on my son Brennan.
really,
Brennan he been interviewed for his intentionality class at College of Charleston, and it has literally brought him out of his shell in terms of learning about to be comfortable in standing up and talking about that, but you never want to talk about the cancer stuff, but not only about that, but his other weaknesses and learning how not
yeah,
to fall in love with your own BS, so that you can do, am I doing this because I think
yeah,
I'm supposed to do it, or am I doing it with intention?
Yeah.
and gratitude and all that.
Well, again, the book was amazing. I
Mm.
appreciate you sharing it, and I appreciate you talking about it. It was one of the things that I wanted to touch on, and I want to get into real estate, and but I got to tell you, we're talking about social media, and I came across the Eric Church
Oh,
commencement
is that not the best?
at
Yes,
UNC,
yeah,
and
North Carolina. Yeah.
so I had zero
Yeah.
clue. I watched this thing, and I was so moved. I watched it
Hmm.
again. So I was, talking about social media. I was watching, I don't know, Instagram or something, and I saw the Eric Church
That was fabulous.
commencement speech,
I
and
saw it.
I listened to it twice.
I passed it on to I told my kids, like, y'all have to
And I
watch this.
made my kids and my
Yep, I
wife,
did too.
right, in my living room. I said, I'm gonna put this on.
We're gonna
Everybody's
watch it.
phones
Yeah.
down. You're gonna watch it. And the thing that he said that I love to what we were talking about is,
No, he was right.
social media is not going to
I
define
know
you.
him, sort of. I mean, I'm not sort of.
Yeah.
We. I mean, he knows enough to know who I am when I walk in there, and I've like, I just didn't. I mean, I know he's a creative, brilliant guy, but that was something that I just was just.
It was
I think of
awesome.
him differently now.
Yeah.
I was always, admired the guy.
I
You have
totally,
to, but I mean,
totally
but
think that.
that's like
Yeah.
a totally different
I'm
level.
with you. Yeah. I'm with you. It was cool. So anyway, that was a good one. All right. So let's talk about real estate. I love real estate.
But those are the six things, the six strings of all the
Oh,
the
yeah.
things. That's kind of it. I mean, that's what what when he talked about it a lot, social media, and then that's
Yeah. Talk family and
yeah,
community. I mean,
civic being civic minded,
yeah.
finding
Yeah.
time to
Yeah.
give back.
Yeah. And, so, I've loved real estate. I was an accountant out of college and got into real
See,
estate.
we had two totally different college backgrounds,
Totally,
didn't
yeah. Philosophy and accounting is
we?
apples and
I
oranges.
avoided the accounting classroom like
And I
like
and,
the
and I remember
flu.
sitting in the philosophy class one day. I'm
It's like,
like,
what is this all
a
about?
guy that grew up near a farm in Ohio is.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure it was English, but so I love real estate because it's tangible. You can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it. I also love real estate because there's so many different facets of real estate, and I often encourage people to look at real estate because there's a little bit of something for everybody in there. And and
It's
and
interesting you said that because when I got out of school, I thought I was going to go to law school, and I knew the background. I did really well on the LSAT, and I worked at a law firm, a big law firm in Atlanta. I'm not going to say it because what it was because I
yeah,
hated it, and I was like, oh my God, I made the wrong choice. I thought I was going to learn whether or not I want to be a litigator or a corporate guy or whatever. If I'd been in a little law firm, I probably would have done it, but anyway, it
yeah,
scared me. And so I asked my dad, I was like, can I come work for you? He said, no. He said, no. He said, but if you want to learn about real estate, go work for a developer because you're going to learn everything because you've got the land part, learning to look at a piece of land, finding out, what are the attributes of that property, what are the negative things about it that would work for whatever you want to do.
yeah.
You've got the investment side, right? You got the performance and the analysis, you got the planning and design, and you've got marketing and sales and management. I mean, you've got the whole
You
pretty
gotta,
much spectrum. Now, it could be obviously different degrees of versus you know the the big REIT level type stuff and things
yeah,
like that. But there's elements of that too. And he said, then you can figure out which hat you want to wear. I wanted, I
yeah,
liked all of them, unfortunately.
yeah,
Other than the property management hat, I don't really like that one that much, but I'll wear it
yeah.
too.
So we're both in the community master plan business right now, and we're working on this project in Greenwood, South Carolina, called Old Eight,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because we're taking something that was old,
Mm-hmm.
that was already defined, and we're trying to, rebirth, reinvigorate that
Mm-hmm.
with a new portion as well, and so we're trying to blend and weave those two communities and fabrics together, and
Sort of a renaissance and new thing at the
it's an
same time.
extreme cultivation. There's no doubt about it. But I will say, the people that we brought into it, you and I know a lot of the same people that work on some of our projects, the consultants that are passionate
Mm-hmm.
and can take the horizontal aspect and weave this together. It's been amazing, and we're redefining place. And as I I want to get your thoughts on this because as I look out and I forecasted a lot of the projects out there, right? There's greenfield, there's renovations or tear downs. There's all
Mhm.
kind of real estate projects happening. But this has been really fun for me because not only do we have to recreate place, but we have to reintroduce the place to the people as well.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of opposition and adversity, and now we're starting to get people to say, well,
You gotta rebrand it.
we got to rebrand it, and so it's been really neat from a
Mm.
master plan community. But just talk about your beliefs and some of the things that you've seen over the years in master plan communities. I think the belle of the ball is Cane Island.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm excited about what you're doing there, and I want to make sure you tell people about it. But just talk about the evolution. And Hammond's Ferry was a super
Right.
successful T&D, but talk about that journey that you've been on.
So I learned that, so I started out working with Nicholas, and that was I just I love golf, right? And so my dad, Jack had been in the development business for a while, but people probably heard about some of the
Yeah.
deals that weren't great. They were in bad markets, good projects, good golf courses, but bad money. And so Bob Sierra, the guy I mentioned earlier, came in as CEO, and my dad knew him. He was friends with one of my dad's roommates in
Hmm.
college. And so I had a number, and I kept calling the guy, and finally just kind of, I guess I wore him down or something. But anyway, so I started out
Persistence.
doing the gated community high end. I eventually became a project manager, meaning the listeners probably know, but I mean, you're basically managing everything from the golf course operations to the sales to ongoing development, the various phases of development till you're finished. And the as someone who was observing Country Club of the South in Atlanta was my last project management job
Yeah.
with them.
Okay.
And if you've ever been there, but their
Yeah, I
house is
have.
bigger than the clubhouse, a
Yeah.
20,000 square foot house. A lot of celebrities live there, a lot of athletes, um, and um, and I understood the need for the gate there. At the same time, I also noticed that because of the way it was sectionalized into, I guess this is probably more of a 90s and 80s kind of model, but you have your condos here, you have your $1 million houses here, your plus $1 million houses here, your $300,000 houses here, and there was this sort of an inherent segregation within which was a recipe for um, not a disaster per se, but like I just noticed HOA meetings. There was like people
Yeah.
like
Tension.
the
Yeah.
tennis people didn't like the golf people. The
Yeah.
$1 million people looked down on $300,000 people. It's like so that's where I kind of really started. I think I instinctively or inherently kind of just knew about new urbanism just because of growing up and observed. Like my mother grew up in a little town, Covington, Georgia, which is a beautiful little
Yeah.
town square. My grandmother, I could go stay at my grandmother's. I could walk down to the corner, in the square. I'd go to the movies. I'd go to the hardware store. I'd go to the get some ice cream at the drugstore, the lunch counter, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And I remember asking my boss. This is the one thing I disagree with them on. I said, what if we were to do a golf course community like this, kind of like St. Andrews, where you've got the town,
Right there.
small scale, and versus having golf houses down the side of everything and out of bounds everywhere. Again, this is a guy that started doing stuff in the 70s and 80s. And he said, no, it'll never work. So when I moved back to home, I was dead set on doing something like that, proving it wrong. And well, not proving it wrong, but proving it would work is more
Yeah.
like it. And people scale and well executed, consistently well executed design, very rigorous design standards. We had to have a school for trim carpenters, for example, to come in and show like how you do a proper cornice return, and make certain that that the depth of the overlaps on the planks wasn't too thick or too thin, and all this kind of stuff. And the had we deviated on one house at the beginning, it would have been different. But we're in your listeners who don't know Augusta, North Augusta. North Augusta is on the South Carolina side of the river, and right across from downtown
Yeah.
Augusta. And at this time, it was more of a bedroom community, and the
Hmm.
blue blood Augusta people would never have thought about moving to North Augusta. Well, guess what? They're all over there
They're
now. They
all
got
over
the
there
highest
now.
values in town, and it's all because of the walkability and the scale. You've got narrow streets, so cars have to slow down. Um, and but it's all new urbanists, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't think it has to be that way. I do. If you look at the people call the transect, where you go from rural to uber urban, to the extent that we can, it's not contrived, and you can do that. I think Kane it definitely has that, where you've got large, we've got much open space, and you got large lots, acre to 4 acre lots on one side that distills down into a little village. It kind of, I think it feels authentic. In terms of the future and the rest of the world, I think that you can't have the new urbanists here and the suburban guys here. The
Yeah.
suburban guys need to learn some stuff,
Yeah,
but the
absolutely.
new urbanist guys don't need to be so sanctimonious either and think that we're the bee's knees. And the historic preservation people don't need to hate the new urbanists because they're doing new stuff and they're saving old stuff. It's it's all that stuff needs to work together. I mean, you could do something downtown here where you maybe have an old cool old building you could fix up, tear down maybe a grayfield site behind it where an old whatever it is, and you can do that. I'm the greenfield going out, moving out into suburbia. I try not. I don't want to do that. Kane is not so much that because it's already in the middle of town.
Yeah, it's right in the middle. Right.
But unless there's a good reason to go on the outside of the suburbs and cut something down these days, there's so much in the middle that needs to be fixed.
It's amazing. I think what you're saying is exactly right in terms of, master plan communities. And we started at Levittown back in the
Yeah.
50s, right?
Hmm.
Is where it started. But if you think before that,
Hmm.
I mean, it was the normal. The
It's what we
train
did.
ran through the middle of the town. You had Main Street. It's funny. I grew up in a little, they called it a village. There was 3,700 people. My grandparents had a corner store called Green's Market.
Mhm.
Joe and Mary Elizabeth were my grandparents from the Greatest Generation. I still think about them
Yeah.
today. Actually, our company, Frontlight Building Company, is named after my other grandmother, Viola. Her concept was when the front light was on at the house, that was her signal, that sense of hospitality, that
Yeah.
you could go in, literally walk in her
Walk
house,
in and
candy jar, cookies. I mean, what you see is what you
sit
get
down at
with
the
me,
table,
my
whatever.
mouth, the
Yeah.
whole 9 yards. I
Yeah.
can thank her. But it was just an incredible time. But if I think about that town, Joe and Mary Elizabeth, they lived above the store.
Yeah.
We had a farm about 10 minutes away where we raised, beef cattle.
Hmm.
And that was what people knew. I grew
Hmm.
up every day. I lived very close. I'd get on my bike and I'd hightail it over there and eat cereal and spend the time with my
Yeah.
I didn't know any better. And so when you think about the development of the community, suburbia, if you will, it really, you know, you talk about philosophy and psychologically, it really
It changes who we
depleted
are.
who we are. Like there's some people that'll move into a house and won't even know their neighbor.
Well,
I mean,
that's kind of where
it's
I'm going
crazy.
with everything. I mean, you close your garage door and that's it. And if their dog barks, you don't go talk to them. You call
Yeah,
the HOA, right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's and there's you had back, you mentioned the railroad tracks, right? Of course, there you consider the wrong side of the tracks. You always heard about. Now there's wrong sides of the interstate
Yeah,
or the bypass or what, I mean, we're amputating parts of cities all the time. I mean, Moses did that in New York, where parts of Brooklyn all of a
yeah,
sudden became the slums because this highway just split it in
yeah,
half. And we see it in Atlanta. We even see it in downtown Augusta, where the Calhoun Expressway goes through town.
yeah. So what
Even
do you
and
think the trick is
so
to?
it's one thing I think is refreshing is that the GX and Ys and down
Hmm.
are there is definitely a sort of a subconscious understanding of community, and that's why I think you're seeing so much success in these loft, rehabs in most towns, here in Greenwood and Augusta and whatnot. I mean, if there was more for rent housing in downtown Augusta now, it would fill up overnight,
Yeah,
And again, it's not for everybody. That's why, when I was showing some of our partners Hammond's Ferry, I was like, no, I'm not saying we got to do it like this, but there needs to be an element of this.
yeah,
And overall, it needs to naturally connect to the next, level, whether that's a little bigger lot or maybe a park on that's, whatever,
yeah.
something natural that breaks it up, versus a big fat road that you can't walk across.
That's
Uh,
what we did here at Old Aid. We have the village center, where it's like Scotland. It's funny. I was laughing when you said
yeah.
that because it's the clubhouse and the range and the short course and then we've got roads that lead to that are connected to a little bit larger lots, right? Not everybody wants to live in that
Hmm.
village, but it's all woven together through trails and everything else.
Right.
And I guess the trick is in your mind, or talk a little bit about what is the trick to take somebody that will pay, um, you know, a lot of money, quite frankly,
Mm.
for those like, because they're so used
You
to
mean
that
who's never been there?
exclusivity. Yeah, they're
Well,
so used to that
well,
exclusivity,
that
but
gets back to what I
yeah,
thought I was talking about, and I know this. I've seen it. I mean, I've witnessed this happening. When we started Hammond's Ferry, for example, we have the entire riverfront as a park. As I think you know, there's the
yeah,
city built a path that goes
yeah,
connects to
it's
other roads and
beautiful.
trails. All the houses face it, but it's a big lawn. We built this beautiful little sort of undercover temple building, and once the houses that frame that, that you have the public space. I mean,
Hmm.
everything's kind of centered on the public spaces, where the civic spaces where people gather. But if you have well executed design as the frame to a picture, so to think of it that way, and you do things in that part that bring people together. We've had music events in the early days. People would bring their blankets and their picnic baskets and see a good, I'd bring in some like really good musicians, and people are sitting around going, you know what, this is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I want to live here.
We programmed Manuel's restaurant into the first phase. We had to basically have people audition for this role because we needed to know they were committed to it, but it also needed to be somebody whose reputation as a chef was they could have been in Timbuktu, right? Because we weren't really much on the map yet. And people would come and sit out on the sidewalk and go, yeah, this is pretty nice, maybe. Um, and then the next one is if you can sort of nurture, get to know the people, and refer, the referral at the beginning, referral network at the beginning is crucial. If you can get like-minded people who know other people and can invite them in, then all of a sudden you have basically the bell cow that people, start to
Yeah,
follow. I'm not going to mention names, but there's a one very well-known family from Augusta who's, big in the community. When one of them moved over there, all of a sudden, oh, it's fine,
yeah.
whereas, year before, no, but it's,
But I feel like it's coming
but it,
back. I
but
feel
but yeah,
like
but it's not
it's
contrived. You're
yeah,
just setting the table and let
yeah.
them eat the food, and then
So talk about Kane, because it's your most recent project. I've been out there, and that land is just, Turner. I've walked a lot of pieces of dirt. That's a pretty special piece,
yeah, I
with the
know.
high
I couldn't
bluff,
believe it
and
was there.
it is amazing. But what was your thought on Kane? Because I've seen a lot of different plans for Kane over the years. That piece of land set there, entitled, but never really had any movement. And then when you and your group came in, and I mean, talking about the master plan, because I do think I don't think it's normal in a good way. And when I saw the plan, I feel like you're on the cutting edge of pushing things forward into the next
Right.
evolution
Well,
with what you're doing
thanks for
there.
saying that, because I think it's kind of back what I was talking about before. It's sort of showing that these things can work together.
Yeah,
And you're doing it here too. But Brunson Miller, who's now a project manager, worked for a real estate guy at Charleston, and I just had met him, and he told me about Kane because it was the master plan. I think when the previous owner had it, was done by Dover Cole out of Miami, and they did
yeah,
our plan at Hammond's Ferry. So immediately I was like, oh, that's up my alley. But then when I thought it was going to be sold to a big, production builder, a national builder, and forgot about it. And then when it came back, then I had a client from Northeast Private Wealth Management who was interested in. He was one of my clients for the investment advisory group. Was interested in real estate. I found out it was on that the contract fell through, but I called the owner and they said, "Well, it's got a contract, and it's actually got two contracts. You better get your act together pretty quick." So I had to do a quick back of the napkin plan, which I literally, I got a engineering scale and I kind of cranked out,
yeah,
sort of, the most, efficient thing I could do. But programming in things like a restaurant, wellness, something for boating,
yeah,
again, all those little things I was talking about. had our local engineering firm do the math, and it worked. And I said, okay, and we ended up getting the deal. So the original plan was pretty close to what it is now, with the exception of the fact that well, let me back up. It was the original plan from the standpoint of knowing that it was going to be super laid back, but I wanted to set a standard that was a new sort of archetype, particularly for the Low Country. I mean, right now the bar is established. Well, is it like Palmetto Bluff? Is it like Kiowa? I said whatever we do, I don't want to be compared to anything else. I want the best of those things maybe to be somewhat reflected in there, but I want to try to create a new brand and identity. A lot of which had to do with service, super laid back, bare feet, but super high level service, and all of these other cultural elements there that are just there on the periphery that again sort of just add color and light and make
Mm-hmm.
your day-to-day experiences and make people feel more present, whether that's having whether that's people painting or music or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just the little things that make a night a little more memorable when you're there. And so, in order to do that, we need, like, I'm not a service guy. I mean, not a hospitality guy. We needed a partner, and that's how Daniel Communities came on board. I was super impressed with what they'd done at High Hampton up in Cashers,
Mm-hmm.
and because that was a sensitive project with the old
Yeah,
inn.
absolutely.
Matter of fact, when I first heard about it, I was like, "Oh, I'm up."
Yeah.
But and I went up and talked to Charlie Tickle, who runs Daniel Corp, and he introduced me to those guys, and it's been and they brought in some great ideas. We did the we did the spitball plan, and we threw darts at everything.
Yeah.
And one of the best things that happened was I believe it was Dan Kiefer with who was one of our planners,
Mm-hmm.
suggested in the middle, as you recall, the middle of it had been farmed.
Yeah.
So you had all these beautiful live oaks around the edges, but the interior, the integrity of it was really not much there other than a few sporadic trees. I had shown like big kind of mini farm, 10-acre things there. And they decided to put in a lake, which was brilliant. And now that gives us a water
It's
amenity in the
beautiful.
middle.
Yeah.
It's its own kind of connectivity thing, by paddle boat or whatever, or I mean canoe, kayak, or whatever. Fortunately the soils were great for it. It gave us stormwater, solution, and and a natural, as I mentioned earlier, sort of a transition point between the natural areas and the large lots
Yeah.
and down to the village.
I also noticed, I've been reading a lot on wellness and well-being, and that
Well,
is a
that was a huge part of the beginning of
huge
mine for me.
part, you know,
And
and
there was a little, I had to get into a little, I mean, I had to teach or convey to a lot of folks. I'm not just talking about yoga.
yeah, this is sunlight,
I'm
daylight.
talking
This
about
is,
living well.
yeah,
Anything that
it's a
you do,
big
it's
opportunity.
being present. Again,
Yeah.
my wife is a life coach. She went on this wellness trip to Morocco
Hmm.
earlier this year, and the director had everybody bring. They gave her this book on how to really use your iPhone camera, and they gave them a sketchbook. None of them were necessarily photographers or artists, but the point of it is by really looking through the lens intentionally at what it is, you're more present, right? It allows you to shut off the noise there. Or drawing,
Yeah.
you're focused on something. You're not checking your email or letting the phone ping. For me, that's playing a guitar
Yeah.
or working on a master plan or whatever. But that could be fly fishing. It could be learning how to cook. It could be working in a garden in our little farm at Cane Island. It could be um, breaking bread with, at a family style
Yeah.
meal. It could be,
We're just reintroducing things
or
that have been
just,
around for a long
or just
time.
say, I think maybe I do want to learn guitar.
Yeah.
I'm 60 years old, but why not?
Yeah. Why not?
Uh,
It's funny. I'm presenting tomorrow to a global board of directors up in North Carolina, and the presentation is about just building and some things that we're doing as an organization. But I've got like 5 slides in there about well-being.
mm-hmm.
I've been doing a lot of research about where that industry is going,
It's
and in the
it's,
home,
it's
right? Yeah, in the
I
home,
mean,
like
it's like this. I mean,
simple
that type.
things like just daylight and sunlight and
All the
the
feng
psychological
shui stuff.
impacts.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been.
You've been studying blue zones.
I haven't studied blue zones. Tell me about that.
Well, blue zones have to do with there are places where people that have been identified around the globe where people tend to live longer and healthier, and it's identifying the elements that the common threads between all of those. Most of these are old places. There are a couple of
Yeah,
newer ones, but it's pretty. But water has a lot to do with even an image of water like
yeah.
that will make what
The
if it can
psychological
show to
effect.
break your
Yeah.
blood pressure come down. Um,
Boy, I need to stare at
and
water all day then. So,
so it could be like a koi pond,
yeah,
right? Or it could be, of course, Kane. We got beautiful water everywhere. So you don't have to be on the coast to
yeah,
know that. Excuse me, to try to understand
yeah.
how that whether it's of course we want buyers, right? But at the end of the day, we want people who love living there,
You want people that love
and
living. They're
then
ambassadors.
and
Yeah,
that's your brand,
yeah,
because it's not that we crushed it and made X dollars. Is that we made is like that's we made I mean, we made a great
yeah,
thing that made this part of the world a little better, and we made some money at it,
yeah,
right? I don't want my kids thinking that their dad did well because he built
yeah,
made a bunch of money building Walmarts. I'm sorry, I've got friends who do that, and I'm probably just offended half of them.
yeah.
But
No, I hear you. I tell my kids all the time,
I
or
mean,
you
I
can.
want to make sure that my grandkids are going to say my grandfather
Yeah,
did that.
I say you can do good, you can have fun, and if you do those two things well, you'll make money, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of lived my whole philosophy in my career, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if I do the right thing and I have fun at what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
then the money usually takes care of itself. Um, Great, fascinating conversation on Kane. I love it. I think it's going to be a booming
Well, I'm
success.
hoping you're going to help
Yeah,
us make it
and yeah,
better.
we're looking forward to that. And there's a lot of parallels. Dan Kiefer and Whitmer Kiefer Jones are working on the old eight, so we have a lot of
He comes up
commonality.
here a lot and rides his bike, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he's a crazy talk about well being. He's a crazy
Yeah, I mean, that dude
fitness
has like zero
and
body fat.
yeah, I mean he makes me every time I see him in the morning, I'm like, okay, how many miles did you run this morning?
Hmm.
Uh, so I want to talk about golf. Our project here has a golf component. You have a lot of golf experience, and
That's a
obviously
wellness thing
your
too.
mentors. Like, what do you feel like where golf is? I feel like golf has really changed with COVID. It
Of
was,
course, yeah.
it was the only thing to do, and now I like to tell the story
Well,
that
so many more people started golf because of
so many
COVID
more people
because you
started.
could be
But there's a
outside.
social side of golf now. Par three courses, there's simulators. There's not just going out and spend 5 hours to play a championship golf. So what's your thoughts on golf in master plan communities? Like where do you see,
There's
obviously the
one
Nicholas company back in the day versus where
right.
they're going is a
Well,
little different.
I mentioned Daniel Communities. I mean, we're obviously getting along because we're looking at doing another project with them,
Yeah,
and just across the Georgia border in Alabama on it, like, but it's going to have a golf element,
yeah,
and it's just very preliminary now. But one of the Troy, our the main planning guy, I mean, has programmed in a small like a short par four course, and you're
yeah,
seeing that at places like Apogee down in South Florida,
everywhere.
and even when the Augusta National's done in Augusta with the old municipal
Oh,
course
the pat is
and
it called the
the
patch?
patch,
Yeah,
yeah, and there's an education element there to try to get to teach kids to get into whether it's a caddy or learn. There's an agronomy school there. It's done with
yeah,
Augusta Tech. Agronomy is the what nursing is to hospitals. There's
yeah,
a shortage,
yeah,
and it's not vital. And so that's but there's the par three course, and it's lighted. Getting people out there, maybe have some fun doing that. And I think from a development standpoint, obviously, my good friend Mike Walrath, honestly, I'd give him a, pretty much the credit for this new wave of stuff because what he did at Ohoopee, what ended up at Ohoopee was very intentional, but the consequences of it, I don't think Mike would probably say that he never
yeah.
expected all of a sudden all these people trying to replicate
It's amazing.
that feeling. And that feeling again, there's those who don't know it. I mean, it's very laid back. I mean, you walk in with not even this nice with jeans or whatever. Um, but it's family style food, but really well done. There's no menu. You sit down and eat, and it's geared for there's a small membership, but you have we've got you can bring on a company of guests, so I could be there and meet two other groups of non-members, and it's just whatever the architecture and the way you eat and the way you hang out makes you meet people and you hang out and make friends.
Hmm.
You sit around the fire and play music. You help yourself to the bar, whatever. And now this part of the world's overrun with it. I mean, you've
It's
got
unbelievable.
21 Old Barnwell. You got a tree farm, obviously. You got broom sedge. I think you got rose. I mean, I don't know how many courses are brand new that sprung up since
There's a
then.
lot.
And
Yeah.
they're all selling not just memberships, but founders memberships too. So
Yeah.
I'd say that's a pretty good barometer for the health of the golf industry, at least in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's what
but
we're trying to
master
do.
plan community, though, I
Yeah.
think it's back to what you're saying, though. You need to have that pure element. You can't just have houses just framing it like you see down in
Yeah.
Central Florida where out of bounds is everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
More core facility, or to the extent you can have most of it, meaning core, meaning it's not just a big loop around, with houses that maximizing house frontages, but more of a
I think
core.
what we've tried to do is take the golf element, because it was there. I
Mm,
talked about it.
mm-hmm.
It's being rebirthed and rebranded, but we wanted to create. We have the lake. We wanted to create a lifestyle around that because if you take a family of five and the husband loves golf and the
Right.
wife doesn't, and they've got three kids and some play golf, some don't,
Well, you got your
that's going
wellness
to
thing too. Yeah.
dictate who's going to come to that
Mm.
property and how they're going to come. Yeah, you can do the guys trip. You can also do the family trip. You can also do the nature stuff. And so I think
Kind of like
with
exact same thing we're doing,
that's
basically.
exactly right. Right.
Except for you
And
have the advantage of having golf. We
so
don't have
we
that.
have the golf, but we have many
We
facets of golf: the social side of golf, the serious side of golf, the fun side of golf, and
Callaway,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
You'll
so
have
I think
pros there,
it's
and that's going to make it cool. It's like, hey, there's
yeah,
whoever.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's been really fun for me because I feel like I grew up in a completely different
Mm.
model of
Well,
golf.
Lake Greenwood's awesome, though. I mean, it was small.
It's authentic.
It's just nice,
Yeah,
And if you look at for the lake people, there's people who have lake houses, beach houses, mountain houses,
yeah,
everything. But there's some people that are kind of more lake oriented. It's there's really there's not a whole lot of these things like of this size that that are reasonably close, like close to Augusta, Columbia, which is close to not too far from Atlanta,
yeah,
Charlotte. It's a refreshing difference from Lake Oconee is awesome, but it's gotten
yeah,
kind of crowded too.
yeah,
Of course, Lake Lanier and all that.
yeah.
It's like a
So
super highway.
I want to talk about the future of real estate, but I want to relate it to AI because I
You
want
know
to
more about that than I
I
do.
want to get your thoughts on just globally, where do you think? Like, I have a conversation with my family. It's one thing. I have a conversation. I'll get off a conference
Mm,
call and I'm like, oh boy. I listened to the CEO of Big Bank the other day, and he had a really hard day one Friday when he had to go home and just process what where they were going as a company. And so you hear all different facets, people that fight it, people that don't. But what is your just general view of AI in the world and what you're seeing out there?
in real estate or
Just in
overall?
general, I mean, it's because it's going to
Well, I
affect
think the
everything.
parts of it are refreshing. Parts of it basically are should be seen as a reality, and therefore should prepare people to change.
Hmm.
If you're a I'm sorry, if you're just if you're just a straight up stockbroker or a travel agent or any kind of thing like that. I mean, it's you know, and
Change is
start
coming.
thinking about the future.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when we were doing the social media. People like, oh, this direct mail stuff is great. It's like we can actually target exactly who you want, and you can get the I think I think some things is going to improve. Like in some parts of it are terrifying to me. The terrifying? I'll start with the fun part. I think I have a lot of good friends in the music industry, and Keith Sewell, who's was at our house staying. Keith plays with Ricky Skaggs. He's a
Hmm.
band leader for the Chicks, formerly Dixie Chicks. Played with Lyle Lovett's large band, got Grammys, and
Wow.
And Tara, my wife Tara said, "Are you? What do y'all think?" He goes, and he explained to me that in his world as a songwriter, he feels like it's helping more than not. You can of course have AI write a song, right? But if it's an AI song, and you there's today even Eric Church and the big level guys, they're making their money on the road, because the idea of an LP's gone,
Yeah.
um, and to tour. I mean, if you're into the sort of techno, DJ stuff, maybe it might be somewhat of an obsolescence thing, but I've got an app on my phone right now that I have a bunch of unwritten songs, and I could input it. I can just play my guitar, put in half my lyrics, and say, give me another solution to this rhyme here.
Wow.
Play it up tempo, do it more jazz, and it'll like instantaneously spit out other variations of my work that I could theoretically do, um, myself, kind of like writing a letter,
Yeah.
or whatever, or researching. I use it for researching architectural stuff all the time. I asked, to help me, I can input stuff at Kane about, I want this more Anglo, Spanish, Caribbean sort of traditional,
Yeah.
European traditional, but more of that element, older than the antebellum South that people are so used to. And it's been extremely helpful in music. But on the, I still think of 2001 Space Odyssey, where Hal, it can learn emotions, um, and it can judge, it you know it it has an identity, more so than a lot of humans,
Yeah.
and it could just decide to shut down the grid and say, "All right, y'all are a bunch of idiots." Boom,
Yeah.
and
It's scary. Some of the people that I won't say their names, but I listen to, and where they think, it starts to bounce up against humanity a little bit,
it does.
and it's terrifying. I see it as about data, right, as it relates to real estate,
Well,
and
just like I was using it
yeah,
there, like for that, yeah.
exactly. I mean, when I see it and what we're using it for is as a building and development company is we have so many data points on things
Hmm.
that we create and we can structure that data and we can bring our customer into that
Yeah,
journey a
help you
little
refine a
bit
marketing
and help him.
plan.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
help you determine whether
it's
is
amazing.
this a.
And I often say for our company, it's, we want to get somebody on that life cycle of, as a customer, and we don't want to let them off. And
Hmm.
AI will help us do that as is the various data points that we gain, whether we're servicing their house, whether we're building their house, whether we're trying to help them sell their house. That intelligence, those data points, kind of like
Hmm.
evidence-based medicine that we're connecting and collecting, is very valuable to us.
Of
Where
course,
a lot of it just sits in a shelf, right?
right.
And so now we're bringing it off the shelf and
And putting
and
it to
and
work.
and working on all that stuff. So so I think it's going to change. I think it's going to change drastically. As far as the real estate business, I mean, I think it's
But in terms of placemaking,
it's not going to change
I mean,
that.
it might. Well,
It'll help
I think it'll
thinking.
help us. I think it's going to help us as a standpoint of refining this continual refinement, and data points in terms of, what are people responding to food wise? What are people responding to, music wise?
Yeah,
Trends and so forth. As we try to program and build what we think would be best for
yeah,
that group of people that are going to live there, um, to marketing strategies, testing out, is this, it can help you find new submarkets and things
yeah,
that hey, there's a lot of people from wherever Nebraska starting to look at
yeah,
that because they're moving in from some engineering firm that's working for XYZ.
yeah,
But we used to use LinkedIn as a really great target for when I had New Fire Media, in terms of doing high, quick, being able to target decision makers with certain companies, for certain clients, um, and but you can pretty much get AI to do that now. Like if
mm-hmm.
I need another relocation person for XYZ construction company that's bringing in 9,000 jobs. You know, you don't have to. Some things you don't. You can. It's even making some of the, like what was the tip of the spear digitally a couple of
Yeah.
years ago was now become obsolete.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing.
keeping up with it's
Yeah,
hard.
it's fast and it's
Yeah.
happening fast. I mean, it's rapid. So as we kind of wind this down, I want to talk about, we talked a lot about real estate and, you know,
Talk about a lot of stuff.
I do think your philosophy on master plan communities is so spot on, and you're living it and breathing it, right? And some of the stuff you've done, and it's great. And I draw upon that stuff, right? So I appreciate you sharing
Well,
that.
you show it in what you do. So,
Yeah, we talked about adversity, right, and how that has helped shape your life. But as you give your you know your purpose every
mhm.
day and your perspective every day, like share with the listeners and the audience, like what as people listening out there that are in their business or in their career life journey, what are some words of wisdom or advice that you can give them, right?
Wow.
Because it's a lot, but I just I always like to, well, somebody like yourself who's been so successful in so many different arenas and touched so many different things.
Mhm.
Most people get up and maybe work the same job for 30,
Right.
40, 50 years, right? They don't get to see a
God
lot of
bless
that
them.
stuff.
Yeah.
What is give a purpose or perspective that you feel like if you were talking to 27,000 people and today you had to tell them something that what was your
You mean
purpose
my
or
Eric Church commencement speech?
yeah, I mean, if you want to rattle that
Yeah.
off,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
was
Well, I mean, although I mean, he nailed it, but and I think probably if those of you who heard it, I'll probably sound like I'm copying some of it, but part of it is, the main thing is being honest and intentional with everything. Understanding who you asked me about who I admire the most, and there are people in your life, whether however you grew up, whether it's nurturing great family or even in the worst of conditions. There's you need to know pay attention to what went wrong, what went right, and be grateful for what went right, but be grateful for what went wrong from the standpoint of hopefully not to nurture improvement versus anger and resentment. We need to listen. Um, is what I'm saying. I mean, nobody listens anymore. I mean, if you look at every political ad, it's all negative about this guy or that guy. I mean, we've
yeah.
categorically broken into a country that this side is this and those are guys are that.
Hmm.
Um, and no one even bothers to consider, are there elements of that person's opinion that may work better? That it's just categorical. I hate those people, and they hate me. That can't. That's a train wreck, and we have to therefore understand that we have to be true to ourselves, not worry about what other people think about us, other to the extent that I knowing that if I do the best that I can do, admit what I don't know how to do, and ask for help, that people will think great of me. I mean, it's just being honest and
Yeah.
and humble, not bragging about stuff. Warren Buffett talked about that a lot too. Is being quiet with your successes, and whether it's your money or your next deal. Don't brag about things too early; it could hurt you. But also having some civic purpose, whether that's just volunteering for something or other,
Yeah.
and having it could be at the first tee, it could be at the hospital, it could be with local, um, could, housing authority. It doesn't matter. I think, but we need to know that we're all, we all have a responsibility to do something.
Yeah.
There's so many role models of I mean, I'm, of our leaders today who just are uber wealthy, and I guess this is more of a servant leadership model is what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
Christ model, where you empower people to make decisions, you give them a certain amount of leeway to make, to say, all right, I trust you to fix that problem, within a degree of expense or whatever. And then if they, but you don't have time to be a top down leader.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm trying to keep up with my own stuff versus having to
Well,
look at but down and having to
yeah.
micromanage everybody and figure out. I mean,
Well, and I like
I
that
want people to want to
because
work with me.
I think it's funny. The full circle moment is some of the places that you're working on and I'm working on draw a lot of that out, right? You see your neighbor, you know your neighbor.
Mhm.
You're talking to people at the coffee shop. Forgetting
And I
about
can be a lot
forgetting
better at
about your
that. Yeah, yeah.
differences, right? You may, go to a social place and talk to somebody
Mhm,
that, where if you live in one of these isolated communities where there's no sidewalks and
mhm.
everything else, you don't get, I mean, you may go to the amenity center 27 times, you may not, know anybody for
Yeah.
2 years. So hopefully, my belief has always been as we continue to create place and build space, hopefully, some of the societal things that we're starving for start to come back a little bit, and the Main Street,
It's the
the,
non-analog stuff
that's
again,
it.
just
Yeah.
like this sort of inherent understanding of that, people talked about traditional or new urbanism as a concept. It's like
Yeah.
it's not a concept, it's what
Yeah.
we've been doing for since
Long time.
Babylon,
Yeah.
well before Jesus Christ existed.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
everybody lived. Um, but we're repairing. It's more of a repair. It's a renaissance and repairing something that was broken. um, I mean, Lord knows. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the. I mean, I've done probably too much on the civic level. Right now, my civic purpose is press on our pediatric cancer research fund, knowing that we started that thinking that we were out of cards, with my son, but we've invested in some things that are making a big difference. I mean, big difference.
Yeah.
But as a community level, I'm involved with the community foundation, local community
Hmm.
foundation. But I used to do way too much stuff, which was to everybody's to my detriment. And it's not about building up a good obituary.
Yeah.
It's about doing it for the right reason, And I can be certainly a better front porch neighbor too. I'm not saying I'm perfect at that. I mean, I'm really good at it sometimes, but sometimes
But you're aware
I
of it.
don't feel like it
Yeah.
sometimes, and
Yeah.
sometimes I just got to go off in a hole and play my guitar by myself,
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with
and
that
try
either.
not to cry sometimes,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that either. No.
Well, listen, I appreciate, you taking the time. I know you're a busy
No,
person
you are
and
too, and
to join us on
I
the
mean, I can't tell you how much I admire what you've done.
yeah. I
From
appreciate that.
I mean, it's really astounding, and it's you do it the right way. Your systems you've built are a model that hopefully that other you know developers and
Yeah.
planners can do. That we need to again. I want feel like it's we're still sort of paddling upstream a lot with people building and developing things that are going to be slums pretty
Hmm.
soon.
Yep.
Um, but let's take advantage of the tools that are out there, and we'll just keep plugging away. And
We'll keep
you're
plugging
making your
away.
part of the world better.
I'm trying, and I look forward to continue to work with you on some of these projects and continuing the conversations. And appreciate you sharing the story about possibilities.
Yeah,
Love to see that become a movie. That would be pretty cool.
it's
And
funny. I have a good friend of my brother's who read it. Didn't know, he didn't know about it. And he told me he was flying. He was on a plane flight, and he just broke down. And the guy next to him
yeah,
was like, "Are you okay?" He said, "No, I'm okay. I'm just,
yeah,
it's. I have a hard time telling people I hope you enjoy it, but I've never had anybody tell me that it didn't
yeah,
mean something to them.
yeah,
So I'm proud of that. But I think like I said, it was. I thank God I did it. I'd probably still be cowering in my little corner if I didn't do
nah.
that.
Well, you did it for the right reasons,
Mm.
and so again, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate all of you taking the time to hear another episode of the Green Scene. And our guest Turner Simkins, we've been blessed to have him here today. And again, continue to follow us along the journey of the Green Scene, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.